Hello everybody, welcome to the Epic Flight Academy. This is the Private Pilot Ground School and my name is Mike Thompson. So what are we talking about today? Today we want to get into aircraft instruments, in particular the flight instruments. Now when we do this, you're going to see these videos. Remember, to be successful, there's 3 parts to your study. Number 1 is these videos, but they parallel number 2, Epic's online learning program, and number 3, be sure you are reviewing this content with your flight instructor. So let's go ahead and get started. When we talk about aircraft flight instruments particular, we talk about 3 broad categories. Those broad categories are the Pitot-Static System, the Gyroscopic Flight Instrument System, and last but not least, the good old magnetic compass. That's how we categorize aircraft flight instruments. We are going to take a look at each one of those 3 systems in detail. To begin with, let's start with the Pitot-Static System. Now, if you take a look at this diagram, it's quickly apparent why it's called pitot-static. This pitot tube accepts ram air from the atmosphere as the aircraft is moving forward. And this static port is sensing static air pressure. So what does that mean? If I'm standing out on the ramp next to my airplane, I'm experiencing static air pressure. That's the pressure that this static air port is sensing. Now, if the aircraft is not moving, it's not moving forward, so it has no wind relative to its motion. In other words, no relative wind. The pitot tube is also sensing static pressure. The pitot tube comes into play when the aircraft is moving forward and it's sensing ram air pressure due to relative motion. We're going to talk about each of these 3 instruments in detail. But before we do, I want you to notice something else. Our diagram shows the static air system in blue. And notice that static air runs to each of the 3 instruments in the pitot-static system. It runs to the altimeter, the vertical speed indicator, and the airspeed indicator. Now, notice one more thing. That static air source has an alternative static source. Normally, we'll find the static source on the side of the airframe, somewhere around the airplane. What if that static source were to be somehow blocked or clogged or disabled? That's why we have an alternate static air port. So before we move on, the last thing I want you to notice is the lines that are shown here in red. This red line is coming from the pitot tube to one of our 3 instruments. Do you see which one? That pitot tube air pressure is going to the airspeed indicator. Notice it does not go to any of the other instruments, just to airspeed. So as you look at that pitot-static diagram, you can see that all 3 of these instruments, airspeed, vertical speed, and altimeter, get static pressure. Only one of these instruments, airspeed, gets pitot pressure. That's an overview of the pitot-static system. Next, we're going to talk about each of these instruments in detail.